Oh, okay, you're going to be over there?
Yes, I mean, yeah, we've rearranged the studio space a little
Okay.
bit.
Well, I can see that I really,
And,
well, I could have brought my coffee, but some water.
oh, yes, I did. I got you the water, and then I didn't bring it over. There you go.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm afraid I can't vouch for how cool it is, but hopefully it's refreshing. Okay, cool. So I will get this thing started. And I don't think we should go past 12:30. Does that work with your schedule?
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. Do you have a bit more free time now that the semester is over?
No.
No.
I have. Last free time, I have a festival that's coming, and it's been a few family dramas as well. So,
thank you.
So this is.
Well, hopefully this will offer a bit of a respite from that.
Oh wow! So and this was Sean Adams, right? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Taken by.
In jail for 17 years.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
I'm not allowed to say that.
No, you're
Just
more than welcome.
use a curse word.
No, you're fine. We are not on the air yet, although we are about to be. So let me. Oh, thanks. So I have maybe like a 45-second introduction, and then we'll just hop into our conversation. And you are welcome to wear those headphones hanging to your back if you like, but you don't. You don't have to. Whatever is more. If
can we do a level check?
I
just assume not wear earphones, but I guess I could. Let's see it with earphones and without. Okay, if I wear earphones, what's happening?
Okay. Well, I actually don't think we'll be able to hear our levels until we're
live.
Yes. And let me. Here we go. Yeah, because all I can hear is the what's broadcasting right now. So I'd say don't wear headphones.
Okay.
I'll let you know if you're drifting and all.
Okay.
And it's community radio, so we can be pretty informal.
Community radio.
Community, low power FM community radio.
How far do you go?
Go about it's gonna be like a 6-mile radius in downtown New Haven. Okay. And then we broadcast or we web stream on the independent site. So in theory, someone in
the
Australia.
world.
Okay.
Last time I was here, I suddenly found myself being profiled in the New Haven Independent.
Were you or through our interview?
No, not our interview. I was interviewed by Tom Ficklin about.
Oh yeah, that's right. About
Corey Menifee.
Yes, that's right.
So
maybe that will come up. Okay, I'm going to start this thing. Let's see if everything works out smoothly. Welcome to Deep Focus, a radio show about movies and New Haven. I'm your host, Tom Breen. On the first segment of today's show, I'll be joined by Yale Film Studies professor and documentary filmmaker Charles Musser to talk about the 4th annual New Haven Documentary Film Fest, which runs from June 1st through June 11th at the Whitney Humanities Center and the main branch of the New Haven Free Public Library, both of which are in downtown New Haven. Charlie is one of the co-founders of the festival, as well as one of the current co-directors, and we'll talk about this year's lineup of screenings and programs, some of the key themes that he and his co-director, Gorman Bouchard, are seeing in documentary filmmaking in this city and the state, and maybe some reflections on documentary filmmaking in 2017 more broadly. On the second segment of the show, I'll be joined by New Haven Independent staff writer Alan Appel for a review of Alien Covenant, the latest installment in the 4-decade-old sci-fi horror action series that finds a new ship, a new crew, and a new planet beset by the same old problems of nature, technology, and big chompy mouths with very sharp teeth. But first, I'm very happy to welcome back to the show Charles Musser. Charles Musser is an author, filmmaker, and professor of American Studies, Film Studies, and Theater Studies at Yale University. Charles is one of the co-founders and co-directors of the New Haven Documentary Film Festival, along with Gorman Bouchard. And Charles has been on WNHH programs a number of times, including this one last year, and Tom Ficklin's show earlier this year, last year, sometime somewhat recently. So, Charles, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's great to be here as well, Tom.
Excellent. And I'm going to ask you to get nice up and close on the mic, maybe even pulled a bit closer to you if that's far,
okay.
These are quite directional. Excellent. So, for listeners unfamiliar with this fest, you can certainly go back to episode 36 of this show and check out our conversation that provides a bit deeper of a background on the origin of the fest and the mission. But Charles, for people completely unfamiliar with it, maybe could you give a high-level overview of what New Haven Docks is, what's going to be going on over the next, 2 weeks
Sure.
in downtown New Haven?
My pleasure. So yes, as you said, this is our 4th annual installment of NH Docs, the New Haven Documentary Film Festival, and just started 4 years ago as an afternoon of screenings of films by 4 New Haven filmmakers who stumbled across each other at the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival in Missoula, Montana, and we really didn't know each other. We didn't know each other's films, and so we were pleased, astonished, but also embarrassed that New Haven film culture was in such disarray, and so we decided to screen our films for each other and for our friends, and that was really the beginning of the film festival. The next year it was 3 days of programming of material by filmmakers in Connecticut, mostly New Haven, and then last year we expanded to 11 days, 2 long weekends, and we at first we thought we'd be dark in the middle of the week, but we had so many films that we just screen nonstop. This year we're again having 11 days, 2 long weekends and in between, but we find ourselves expanding still further in a number of different ways. So
I was listening back to our interview from last year, and one of the kind of more resonant parts of your description of the mission of New Haven Docs and the origin of it for me was that you were looking to create or kind of coalesce a community of filmmakers and also a community of kind of film-loving audiences here in New Haven. And as you just briefly described that 4-year trajectory that New Haven Docs has gone on, before we even jump into this year's slate of movies, do you feel like that is happening? Do you feel like through this festival, and you've lived in New Haven and been working in movies and around movies for a long time in the city and elsewhere. I wonder if you feel like the New Haven filmmaking and film-loving community is a bit more kind of concrete in your understanding, in some way because of NH Docs.
Well, I mean, for sure. But this year, I think actually in particular, I mean, if we were to say, what is the theme of this year's festival? I actually think the theme is New Haven. We have a wider range of films about people who work in New Haven, about communities in New Haven, about incidents in New Haven. Our opening night film is I Am Shakespeare, the Henry Green story. Henry Green was a high school student who led a double life. A star of high school theater, starred in Romeo and Juliet, and then almost later that evening was shot and left for dead as a gang member. And so this is a film about the complexities of, for many people growing up in New Haven, and the potential tragedies, but also perhaps what we can learn about it. We're also showing Texcala Dreams, about the Mexican immigrant community that has really actually been a very vital part of New Haven, but I think is not so well known by people, and even by people in that quite large community, that they haven't had a chance to maybe see themselves on the screen. We're also showing a documentary, Food Haven, about the many restaurants and international cuisine that has, I think, helped fuel the New Haven Renaissance. I could go on.
Well, no, let's sit with that New Haven theme and maybe those 3 movies for a second, because I think that, so we've had, of those 3 movies you've referenced, we've had 2 of those filmmakers on the show. Stephen Dest and Henry Green came on to talk about I Am Shakespeare a couple months ago, and then Jim O'Connor came on just a few weeks ago to talk about Food Haven. And I think that I Am Shakespeare is really the perfect movie to open this festival with, because yes, it describes the kind of multiplicity of identities that really all of us contain, but also something unique to a kid growing up in New Hallville, like Henry Green did, running in a gang in kind of one part of his life, and also acting in theater productions. I think he went to co-op, and Stephen Dest was a professor of his. But it looks at how this, we talk a lot about the town-gown divide in New Haven, and even though Yale University is the gown, doesn't necessarily play a role specifically in this story, I think that what Town Gown ultimately gets at is this kind of divide in American society based on class, based on race, based on gender, and how culture often sits at the kind of the middle of that divide. So Henry, as someone so drawn to the kind of artistic and theatrical creativity of the Shakespeare plays, but also because of his background and his experience growing up in New Hallville, so drawn to the for lack of a better word, the like very violent street life of that community. I wonder, and also it's a formally ambitious movie that has almost kind of just one head-on shot of Henry. I mean, for most of the movie, it's just Henry kind of telling his story to the camera. I wonder if we could sit with I Am Shakespeare for a second more. What is it that drew you to this movie? And is this, I don't know, is this representative of the types of documentaries that you think best get at the complexities of living in New Haven and living in such a segregated and divided city? Or is this more of an exciting filmmaker that you want to highlight? Tell me a bit about what drew you to I Am Shakespeare to feature it so prominently in this festival.
Well, I think you've explained very well why it was a logical opening night film. I mean, I'm the guardian of my nephew who goes to Wilbur Cross School. My son goes to public school. We have a lot of different interactions with different parts of the New Haven community. I mean, in some ways you're right, it's segregated, but in other ways it's relatively permeable, at least if you want to pursue that. And indeed, I think the film itself, that it's made by Stephen Dest, who's a white guy who teaches theater and stars a student of his. I mean, says a lot about some of the kind of potential complexities and potential really of New Haven. I would say. I mean, with the problems come opportunities, and with the opportunities also are a result of problems. So I think that's embodied in that film, and there's another film that in many ways is a complement to that, and we'll be showing that on Friday night. That's The Passionate Pursuits of Angela Bowen, who an African American woman who for many years ran an outstanding dance troupe here, or dance school here in New Haven, and then went on to actually to have a career as a professor and ultimately moved to the West Coast. But for many years, I mean, she was a vital part of New Haven culture. So I mean, it's a film that, and again, you can check this out on our website, www.nhdocs.com, and there's a wonderful trailer for that film, which might excite people to really come and watch it. What's interesting is, in fact, there's so many of these films this year. What is it about this year? I mean, I think with I Am Shakespeare and maybe some other films, I mean, we're in the moment of Black Lives Matters. There's been enough time between when Black Lives Matter sort of emerged, and there's been time for a kind of cultural filmmaking response, and I think that's one of the things we see. It's interesting, we also, besides all these films about New Haven, and we could go on to what some of the others are, there's also a lot of material, nonfiction material by people in New Haven. Filmmakers are people who make webisodes that people, some of whom I knew a little bit, some of whom I've really just discovered for the first time. Cynthia Farrar, for instance, is just finishing a film about prisoners in the Connecticut prison system who have left and are 1 year out. And we couldn't show that film for various reasons. It's going to run on Frontline, but she's been making a lot of short films about all sorts of things having to do with politics in America, but in particular, she made a series of films about couples, one of whom was a Republican, one of whom was a Democrat, and how they survived together, how they managed to get along, really as a way of thinking about how we in such a divided country might get along. So she was someone who she actually has a kind of loose Yale affiliation, but I've been here 25 years and I only met her for the first time this fall. Tom Ficklin, who, as you said, I was on his radio program. Well, he's actually showing a work in progress called The Sanctuary of the Soul. And it's about sacred music in black churches in New Haven. And they're on his YouTube site, and they just sort of sat there. And I was talking to Tom and encouraged him to do something about it. And suddenly he became very inspired. So this is the beginnings of a project that maybe we'll show next year. And it was, to me, it opened a whole new world about New Haven. And I think that's true about almost every one of these films, is that they show us a part of New Haven that we didn't really know about, or I didn't know about, or I didn't know about to the extent to which I have now learned about it. So, I asked Tom, well, how many black churches are there in New Haven? And, he sort of said, well, how many do you think? And I said, I don't know, 40, 45. He said, well, I think the number's somewhere between 200 and 300. And that just blew me away. And just like told me how much, and I've asked that question of my friends, and their numbers have been similar to mine and very, very far away from what appears to be the actual situation that Tom knows so well. So
I think you're getting at a really interesting aspect of NHDocs that I want to pause and reflect on for a second, which is the incredible just gamut of films and filmmakers and kind of filmmaking experience featured in the festival. By my count, there are over 75 different movies between features and shorts, and that's not counting the workshops that will be happening as part of NHDocs. And on the one hand, you have more kind of professional experienced filmmakers like Stephen Dest or Jennifer Abid for Passionate Pursuits of Gabriel Bowen, or of course Gorman Bechard as well, who will be playing a few of his movies here. And then you have, Tom Ficklin is a veteran reporter in New Haven and has been, and a media reporter as well, and is by no means, a novice behind the camera. But I think that, what we try to get at here through community radio on WNHH is that we have something like 30 or 25, 30 different programs that happen over the course of the week. All the hosts are volunteer, and not all of them are professional journalists or even journalists at all. They're people who have lived in and know the city very well, and they show, they bring in people who they want to spotlight for the New Haven community through our airwaves. And I think there's something very special about having a Tom Ficklin go out to, I don't know if he went to 200 different black churches throughout New Haven, but I'm sure that he is, more intimately familiar with that environment than maybe a more seasoned filmmaker from outside New Haven who would come in and try to document that.
So Tom Ficklin, has a divinity degree from the Yale Divinity School. So this is something that he has a kind of, sophisticated and intimate and long-standing knowledge and interest in. And I think, I think this has been the case for us in a number of situations where this year, really for the first time, we've actually been able to encourage people to finish work or start work that wouldn't have happened otherwise. That, one of the things we're really trying to do, and I think without going out of our way too much, rather spontaneously, is to help generate certain kinds of creativity within New Haven that might not have otherwise happened. And, I think, Tom's film, it's a long way between getting excited about an idea and finishing it. But, I think that, if he is able to, and I'm optimistic and going to certainly help him to the extent to which he wants it and needs it, to realize something. This could be a really fabulous piece of work. Then again, people like Kika Matos, who, is well known, I think, as a community organizer in this city. Turns out that she's been making some short videos in relationship to the immigration situation around illegal or undocumented immigration. So, this is it. We, finding a community of sort of people getting at New Haven from different perspectives. Lucille Bruce, who has been working with Yale New Haven Hospital around making some short videos, along with and we're also going to be showing some short videos that Lackey has been working with students or patients to make while they're in the hospital. So there's just a lot of activity going on, which I think actually adds up to a lot and it adds up to a lot more if, in fact, we know about it and somehow see it as something about what's happening in New Haven now, today, and in all its complexity.
So many of, just to give listeners a basic understanding of the structure of the festival, if we haven't made that clear yet, it starts on June 1st, goes through June 11th, and there will be, all of the screenings are free and open to the public. Was I right? I believe that's right. That's right. And
with one small exception, which is on Tuesday night, we will be showing a Pennybaker film about Bob Dylan, and they'll be at Cafe 9, and there'll be a bunch of musicians playing Dylan songs after the film, and there'll be a nominal cover charge there.
And those musicians also New Haven stalwarts. I saw Paul Del Busti on that lineup, Mercy Choir, Brendan Toller, who's been featured in previous iterations of New Haven Documentary Film Fest, whose movie Danny Says will be playing. And this is, and you talk about something that NH Docs has done over and over again, feature movies about music. I don't know if that is more the kind of driving force of Gorman Bouchard, and he being a rock and roll documentary filmmaker himself, or a collaboration between all the people involved with NH Docs. But you guys always seem to bring very interesting, usually local documentaries about music to New Haven, and then, of course, have it at Cafe 9 with a coinciding concert. Last year you had a student filmmaking program, and I see that is also that program, and I don't know if it's a competition at all, but right. There's a student filmmaking section of this year's NH Docs featuring students from Yale, Quinnipiac, Southern Connecticut, Western Connecticut, really all over. Can you tell me a bit about that part of the program? How are you getting students involved with this? Where are the students coming from? What are these movies?
I mean, the students are coming from all over Connecticut and Rhode Island, but particularly Connecticut. So the competition is open to any student who goes to a college, or actually there's quite a few films from high school students in the New Haven area as well. But college, high school, middle school even, in Connecticut and Rhode Island, or students who are originally from Connecticut and may go to school out of state. So that's it's again, it has a kind of local emphasis, and I think that's good. You know, one thing is there's a lot of film festivals that sort of show a certain kind of sort of festival documentary, and you know, those documentaries are often, you know, extremely interesting, they're well done, but they exclude a lot of films that are also extremely interesting and are well done sometimes in a different way. And so, you know, what I like is the fact that we're showing up in some ways a wider range of films, because we have limited our selections based on other criteria, which is, you know, Connecticut. We for instance are showing a documentary, High School 911, about a group of high school students who run an emergency ambulance service in Darien. There's another documentary about 5 veterans of World War II who live in Bethlehem, Connecticut. So I mean, yes, New Haven, but also, you know, truly Connecticut. So we have that. You know, I think that's the local part of our festival, and it's like a major part of our festival. But we also have snuck in a few, I think, outstanding documentaries, and in particular, we have brought up kind of legendary filmmaker and his filmmaking partner, D.A. Pennybaker and Chris Hedges, who Pennybaker is sort of really the sole surviving star of first wave cinema verite, which started, you know, in the early 1960s.
Could you give us just the basic principles of what do you mean by cinema verite?
Well, cinema verite involved mobile cameras with a mobile sound unit, sort of filming people doing whatever they're doing, rather than having them, as had been necessary in the past, sort of stage them or act them out. Because if you wanted anyone to speak, you had to carefully plan it and stage it. So once you had this mobile and lightweight equipment, suddenly the camera could be following people rather than people performing for the camera. So it was a total kind of transformation in cinema. The problem was actually, and that there was a lot of vitality around that, but film has always been expensive, and it became much more expensive in the 70s and early 80s. And so cinema verite sort of, in some ways, stalled, and in other forms. And there were theoretical issues theoretical challenges to cinema verite as well. But with the emergence of digital media, suddenly you could film, today, I mean, you can film a couple of hours of film for like, $7, or $10 SD card, and then you can download it to your computer, erase it, and start all over again. So, cinema verite has really been transformed and revived in recent years by digital media, and I think that Penny Baker and his partner Chris Hedges and their partners in professional as well as personal life, that they were really one of the crucial people for this kind of revival. I mean, they remain committed to the cinema verite approach, and were able to take advantage of new technologies to revive it and rethink it. It's, I think, one of the exciting aspects of documentary today. So to have them up here showing those award-winning films, one of the films, God Spoke Al Franken, is a portrait of Al Franken as he's thinking about moving from comedy and news broadcasting into politics. And he won his Senate seat by such a small, tiny margin that I'm sure that film must have made a difference, because when you see that film, you really actually can't come away from it without sort of respecting Al Franken in some way. That doesn't necessarily mean you vote for him, but I think for many people, seeing that film enabled them to take him seriously in a way that they might not have otherwise.
And
So
I think that what, just to take a step back for a second, so you have been programming for the International Festival of Arts and Ideas for, I think, a long time now, maybe
over
a decade plus. But just recently, I mean, this NH is only 4 years old, and I don't know if last year was the first formal collaboration between this and Arts and Ideas, but now these two organizations, NH and Arts and Ideas, are kind of working together to kind of highlight a particular kind of prominent, important filmmaker, in this case, documentary filmmaker.
Right.
Last year you had Alex Gibney, previous years you had Alan Berliner, Joe Berlinger. So
Sam Pollard,
Sam
Spike
Pollard.
Lee, we've had a range of really, I think, important, sort of legend, in some cases legendary, but certainly always important filmmakers.
And one of the very exciting things about this time of year for me is seeing 6 or 7 movies by Alex Gibney in a row, and being able to make connections between his different works made over the course of decades, to see what themes he's interested in, what he returns to over and over again. But I think what is even more exciting about this incorporation of the featured artists into NH Docs is that you get to watch something like The War Room in juxtaposition with one of the titles that jumped out at me. NH Docs is called, I think, Politics of the People, which is maybe a 15-minute documentary following around local politicians Jeanette Morrison and Gary Winfield. And I love you're talking about how about the profile of Al Franken. I mean, I think The War Room functions in a somewhat similar way in showing Clinton as Bill Clinton in 1992 and 91 and 92 as sitting on this divide of this kind of pop culture phenomena. I mean, almost a rock star era politician who is kind of who is buoyed by these aides, James Carville and George Stephanopoulos, who kind of work at the speed of light. I mean, they're working truly at the speed of the 24-hour kind of news cycle, and that is what kind of helps propel him to the presidency. To see that juxtaposed with how a current political campaign is run, or whatever, I mean, either Winfield or Morrison walking the streets, or whatever this movie is doing to profile them, I find really exciting.
Well, Brianna Burrows, who made this really series of webisodes, Politics of People, right, looks at these 2 very local politicians and then puts them in dialogue with some voters. And the question is, how do they respond to voters? How can voters get them to take the issues they care about seriously? It's about politics on the really local level, and the argument being is that's where actually you can get a lot of things done. And that's actually was one of several films that I think provided a kind of challenge, because it is a series of webisodes, and we felt that maybe the best place to show that was not, in fact, on the big screen in the Whitney Humanities Center. And so we started something that I think we're going to do regularly now called the NH Docs Videotheque. And those films are going to be, The Politics of People will be run a number of times on Friday, Monday, and Tuesday during the festival. That is on June 2nd, 5th, and 6th. Is that right? Yes.
Yes.
And so people, when the library opens, we'll start really at 2 hours of programming. We're also going to be showing Journey of the N-Word by Frank Harris III, which really, he's been engaged in this N-Word project about that unmentionable word for a long time, and it's taken the shape of a documentary. So he'll actually be there himself on Monday, about 1 o'clock, to talk about the film after it screens. So I mean, that's another thing is, finding people like Frank to become part of what we're doing and to get to know him a little bit. It's and hopefully viewers will get to know him a little bit too, who might not go to Southern Connecticut State University, like my wife.
Now, I want to mention at least one more aspect of NH Docs before we end our conversation, and those are the 2 workshops that you are holding over the course of this festival. These are kind of hands-on. One is called a guerrilla filmmaking workshop. The other is a workshop on documentary cinematography. Could you tell me and the listeners a bit about what those 2 are and how they function in the larger context of NH Docs?
Yeah, I mean, these are for people who have some experience making documentaries. I mean, and can learn some tricks of the trade from an experienced cinematographer, or people who are interested in trying to find funding for their projects. People are always asking me, well, I want to make this documentary, but I need to raise some money. Do you know any way to do that? And I think Kickstarter and crowdsourcing is a major way these days to fund many kinds of projects. So, these workshops are for people who are just getting started, or they're for people who are on their way, but, need to maybe pick up some new ideas, some new perspectives, keep things fresh. So I think they should really be 2 quite exciting events, and, we really hope that people turn out for them.
The last question I want to throw your way before you go, Charles, is maybe taking a step back and looking at documentary filmmaking a bit more broadly in 2017, maybe even outside of the context of NH Docs. And again, as someone who has taught about film and filmmaking for a long time and has worked on films, now programs a festival. You were just talking about the kind of resurgence of cinema verite style with the advent of digital filmmaking. I wonder if you see this as a particularly kind of fruitful, exciting, productive time for documentary films more broadly. Is this looking at not just the hyperlocal and even Connecticut landscape, but what's happening in the movie theater downtown, or when you look on Netflix or wherever else you turn to watch movies? Do you see this as an art form that is thriving right now, even outside the context of NH Docs?
You expressed it so well. My temptation is to simply say yes, but of course, digital media has made it possible to experiment in all sorts of ways, and for people to make films instead of spending all your time trying to raise money, which is what I had to do in the 1970s and 80s. You can go out and shoot something and then hope you can pick up some finishing funds. It's liberating. Yes, there are these still high-end documentaries where experienced filmmakers get large advances to make films on important topics or important individuals, but then there's the opportunity to do your own thing, and so that's I think that's what a lot of people are doing. And I have to say that teaching documentary, which is what I do at Yale now, half my course load is teaching documentary film workshop. These students can really make remarkable work. So student films today are much more like first films by professional filmmakers, 10, 15 years ago. Students make make films all the time that I think are the equal of the film I made as my first professional film that won, a bunch of awards at, fairly, prominent educational film festivals. So I mean, the level of work on every level is got to be much higher and much more complex, and it's just the rewards of going to our festival and seeing it, I think, will be quickly self-evident to anyone who gets their way down to either the New Haven Free Public Library or the Whitney Humanities Center, 53 Wall Street.
Well, this is certainly one of my favorite times of year, and if you're listening to the show, you're probably into movies and New Haven, so I think that you would thoroughly enjoy it as well. The website this is key. Everyone, we'll make sure to post this on our website, deepfocusradio.com as well. But to find a complete schedule for the festival, go to, what is the website?
www.nhdocs.com. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of trailers for films. Not every film has a trailer, but many of them do. Posters, stills, descriptions. I think if you go there, you'll see things you want to see.
So we'll make sure to post a link to that on our site. Thank you so much for coming by and talking about the fest today, Charles, Professor Musser, sir.
Thanks, Tom.
And we'll make sure to see you at the festival.
Great.
Okay, coming up next, a review of the latest Alien movie with Alan Appel. But first, let's hear a little bit of local band Ellison Jackson. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Oh, that was perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, that was great. You know every single movie on the festival lineup. I love it. I know that you were involved.
I didn't want. I would want to,
I was so
pronounce Lackey's last name, but I was pretty sure I was going to blow it. So I just.
It's a very exciting lineup that I'm really looking forward to, and I hope that our listeners.
It really is special. I think this year. I mean, it's interesting. Last year the theme sort of was music.
Yeah.
And this year, it's New Haven. I mean, I can't imagine that will happen every year. I mean, it would really, if it did, it would really be extraordinary.
Let's hope. I will make sure to send you a link to this if you care to post it anywhere or share it anyone. But
I can post it on my Facebook page and post it on my website.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, have a nice day.
Yeah, you too.
That's very gourmet.
So you're who runs the panel?
Paul Bass, who is probably sitting to the left of that door right there. He's in. But yeah, feel free to say hi. How about you now? Thanks for waiting. No, she passed. She is the alien. How are you doing?
Good. What's that guy's name? I know him.
Charles Musser.
Oh, he's the Yale professor, right?
Yes, and he
He's
is
the guy behind the doc.
NH Docs. That's what we were talking about.
That's right. Oh, he left his money here. Get it?
Oh.
I could use a 10.
Okay.
He was a very relaxed interviewee, right?
Yeah.
Left everything he had.
That was a tip for me.
That's right.
Okay.
How are you, Tom?
I'm well. I really love this series, the Alien series. So I was very excited to talk about it.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I'm new on the block. I don't follow this kind of stuff, but.
Could you pull the mic up a bit?
Yeah, I don't hear you.
Oh yeah, we're about to go.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Deep Focus, a radio show about movies in New Haven. I'm your host, Tom Breen. On the second segment of the show, this segment right here, I'll be joined by my regular movie reviewing buddy, Alan Appel, for a discussion of Alien Covenant, the sixth entry in the sci-fi horror action series that dates back to 1979, when director Ridley Scott first envisioned Sigourney Weaver's Ripley battling against a chest-bursting monster aboard the cargo spaceship Nostromo. Alan, welcome back to the show.
Hi.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Are you Alan, or are you an alien? Alien the Alan? Alan the alien? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you through the microphone, but I guess that's okay.
As long as you're coming up on a second.
Yeah, no, I'm. My children. I once told when they were puzzled by something that I did. I told them I was from Venus. So I guess that makes me an alien.
So you're particularly qualified to talk about this movie.
I'm tremendously qualified to do a review as seen through the eyes of an alien.
So, Alien Covenant a 2-hour space-traveling action horror sci-fi movie, opens with a quiet conversation between an android and his creator. Michael Fassbender plays David, a genetically engineered specimen of not quite human perfection, who wakes up in the pristine apartment, or laboratory, or whatever it is, of his creator, Peter Whalen, played by Guy Pearce. The room is long, low, and blindingly white, looking out on a dramatically serene landscape of mountains and water, and sparsely decorated with a handful of masterpieces of human culture. Steinway piano, a painting by Piero della Francesca, and Michelangelo's towering sculpture of David's namesake.
Yeah, reproduction, please.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Or a sequel, should I say.
The tense, probing conversation that ensues and the drama of the movie more broadly hinges upon the kind of uncertain boundaries between the android, the human, and the cultural artifacts in between. Is David simply a demonstration of human genius, like a piano or a painting? Is he a fully autonomous, emotional, free-thinking being, like the man standing next to him? Or is he something else, close enough to a man to feel as if he is one, but too far away to be deemed worthy of recognition, respect, and independence? Alan, do you think Alien Covenant follows through on the opening scene's promise to explore the very essence of what it means to be human in an age of advanced technology? Or did you find yourself impatient at the philosophical ramblings and eager for the next alien to come jumping through the next thumping human chest?
Oh, I like the philosophical ramblings. My problem is that I think it was a movie kind of by committee, with a touch of one committee was for the philosophical ramblings, the second committee was for the flying baby tyrannosauruses with octopus things that suck your blood and everything to scare the pants off of you. Very effectively done. And the third committee was arguing for developing the kind of personal relationships that turn a movie like Alien Covenant into something that would be of interest not just to 13-year-olds. So all that is in play here, and I think the movie, to its credit, really keeps all the balls juggled and up in the air, but they're kind of out of balance, and they have the creativity is the purview of the truly human. They debate that, and then what makes you truly human, they debate on the spaceship. Is it duty or is it love? I mean, all these things are interesting, but in a kind of the movie is so committed through the other committee's work to providing the goods for the sci-fi series that I gather that you love, that I think that it's impatient with its own rich elements. But I liked it, and I would recommend it. It's a little weird.
So this is a series that I am quite fond of, and even though I've only seen the first Alien back from 1979,
it was Sigourney Weaver.
With Sigourney Weaver,
Love
also
Sigourney Weaver.
Directed by Ridley Scott, but not just Sigourney Weaver, John Hurt and Tom Skerritt and Ian Holm back in that 79 version. But then this series has long been a vehicle for kind of young, very exciting, kind of talented filmmakers to take their first break at making a kind of big budget but kind of surprisingly substantive action sci-fi spectacular. The next movie was directed by James Cameron, Aliens. Then we have David Fincher doing Alien 3, and the Alien 4 was by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who did Amélie and Lost of Children and stuff like that.
Oh, he did Amélie.
Yeah.
Amélie is
So
fabulous.
So this series has, and this is,
See
back
instead.
when I first started getting into movies, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a friend of mine recommended a book called On Film by this philosopher named Stanley Cavell. What's his name? Oh no, Stephen Mulhall. Stephen Mulhall. And what he does is he offers this kind of deep reading of each of the 4 Alien movies and talks about how film, as evidenced in this series, is capable of kind of contributing to philosophical conversations, not just reflecting conversations or trends that happen independently of movies, not just looking at artwork as a mirror for what's happening in the real world, but rather artwork as participating in a kind of self-reflective, kind of introspective dialogue in the way that we ask any other kind of major, rigorous philosophical text to engage with. And what he finds in the Alien series, I mean, this is part of this kind of whole movement of reading very deeply into pop culture, and sometimes it can be a bit maddening and fatuous. But sometimes I think it's the Alien series. I think makes a very strong argument for treating kind of silly genre pictures quite seriously as telling us something about ourselves, about the way that we structure our society and think about our bodies. And what he gets at in Alien, which I think is quite prominent in this movie too, is this intense kind of insecurity about one's body that we have as humans. I mean, on the one hand, yes, the aliens are kind of constantly penetrating people's bodies, and it's a very kind of violent sexual endeavor. Here, they kind of seep into the ear and then up the nose, but what they always do is kind of emerge from your chest. And this holds true with the violation of the integrity of the spaceship. Anytime that this, whatever the aliens are meant to represent, this kind of merciless nature that is only bent on reproducing, or some kind of larger force that takes no consideration for the human sensitivity and mortality. There's always something looking to disrupt this bodily integrity of ours. But I think that the series, and focusing so heavily on Michael Fassbender's androids, and this is the long line to a question I want to ask you here. Did you find that focusing on Walter and David was enough? It sounds like it wasn't quite balanced enough for you. But for me, whenever we spend time, probably it's because I was so engaged by Fassbender's performance as these two kind of complementary androids. But and that's what I remember. I don't really remember anything about much of the action in the movie. But what I do remember when I think back on it is are these conversations between the androids and getting at something that Ridley Scott examined in Blade Runner, going back to that late 1980s sci-fi movie. What is it exactly that makes us human, and how much of it is our body? I mean, because clearly an android is something that is both embodied like people, but made of slightly different stuff than the humans around it. I don't know. I find that he's able to explore those issues in an entertaining, but also surprisingly is profound too big of a word to apply to anything with the word alien in the title.
Yeah, pretty much. But it is interesting to ask these questions, and the sci and it was Ridley Scott who did Blade Runner.
Yeah,
it was a kind of a standalone.
Which is it was this follow-up to Alien as well, so that was
right. And what I think is interesting about that is it forecasts. It's set in what, for 1980 or 79, it's set in the distant future, 2019, which is not too far away. But it was also about these replicants, these creatures that are sort of approach the human but aren't quite the human. It's interesting what you say about the fragility of the body, and certainly the way this movie, in a visceral way, attacks us or keeps us engaged is these horrible eruptions, attacks on, and then the explosions of the body. And I think that's not that somehow stands in a kind of tension with this cerebral debate that goes on in the movie about, does creativity make us human? I mean, and is the ultimate creativity the physical eruption of a giving birth? And the movie seems to suggest that the aliens prevail because they use the human body as a kind of uterus. They erupt out of these people's chests and attack. But in the end, I mean, the very final sequences, the surviving android who has survived and prevailed because he has creativity. It's the David figure. He prevails against Walter, who is a more advanced version, but more advanced by human standards means that he's less creative and therefore more under the control of the humans. So he prevails, and the form of birth that he chooses is a kind of vomiting up embryos of himself that he puts in a drawer like specimens.
No, these aren't aliens. So this is a bit of a spoiler alert, but it's not embryos of himself, but rather they're of the aliens that he's been kind of incubating on that planet. He's bringing these aliens to whatever next planet this spaceship is flying to in order to, because I think that you're right, creativity is a key word in this movie, and it's been about kind of over and over and over again. But on the one hand, these aliens are creative and that their sole purpose in this world is to reproduce at all costs. They are constantly kind of replicating themselves and creating new versions of themselves ad nauseum. And then we have the type of kind of creative destruction that this android David is more inclined to, which is not just to reproduce himself, but to create something that is recognized as kind of beautiful, unique, and artistic achievement, almost in the way that he's surrounded by those achievements. In the
But it's a muddle. I mean, it's a muddle. What does creativity mean? Does it mean to create a kind of a David, a masterpiece of art, or does it have to do with a human relationship? Because one of the really odd moments in the movie is when Walter and David kind of kiss each other, and it's almost a kind of gay android moment, which is really weird. And Walter, the good human still under human control android, does not respond to the more creative David's embrace. So it seems to suggest that if you are drawn to another person as personality to personality, that's a suggestion of creativity in terms of defining the human, every bit as important as creating a pietà or what have you.
And I think the beauty
it's sort of interesting to think about.
Of having this one android kiss the other, both played by the same actor, is that not only do you get this character kind of groping for any kind of emotional connection to someone who he feels like maybe his like intellectual and physical equal, but also talk about as close a realization of the narcissist myth as possible. If you don't have to look into the water to kiss yourself anymore. Just look at an exact version of yourself. It's like the ultimate representation of the intense like ego of this character.
Well,
he finally found someone to match himself, which is himself.
Well, that's right, which is himself, but not quite himself because of Wall. Not quite himself. And then you could argue from a plot point of view that triggers his rampage. That after that he decides as somebody had this. He decides to beat the humans at their own game, and the best of their own game is the creation of these androids that do everything for humans, but depend on the humans for their very life. This is a spectacular quotation by Stephen Hawking that I picked up somewhere when I was looking at some of the reviews. Hawking, who himself is, because of his, I guess, ALS or his
debilitating physical.
He's utterly dependent on machines to live. And he said, we have at best 100 years to live before evolved machines take human imperfection as justification for wiping us out. I mean, that is, if you to your initial question, is the sci-fi genre a basis for thinking about things? For thinking about that, yes.
And I'm afraid that we're out of time. That's where we're going to have to end. But I think that is the key question. I mean, you don't have to understand Hawking's quotation literally there in order to be kind of shaken by the consequences of developing technology. And I think you don't have to take Alien literally in order to get something out of it. Right? I mean, our increasing dependence upon technology, at one point do we tip into the realm of kind of complete dependence and then being kind of overtaken by technology? I'm clutching at my phone right now as we speak. These things that we already hold to our faces about 20 hours out of 24.
But you should remind our listeners that this didn't begin with this series that you love. It really, it begins in movies and in books with. One of the great sci-fi films that raises these questions about life and death. What is the great 1951 film with the? It's not Forbidden Planet.
Forbidden Planet?
No, it's before Forbidden Planet. Michael Rennie plays this spectacular alien who comes to Earth.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't have the title, and I'm afraid that we've listeners, you'll have to look up 1953.
And the beautiful Peggy Neal, no, what's her name? Can't remember her either, but it's an absolutely wonderful flying saucer that lands somewhere in Washington, D.C., and unless the humans...
the Day the Earth Stood Still.
The Day the Earth Stood Still. And what's her name? Patricia Neal plays the human who really understands the alien.
But you can look to 2001: Space Odyssey, Blade Runner,
when
Alien,
Hal takes over.
This is a familiar theme.
It is a familiar theme.
But it's a rich, it's one worth returning to, I think. I'm afraid that we're over time. I'm going to have to cut us off. But you recommend it or an A?
Oh, absolutely. You should watch this, and you can watch it on Earth or on Venus, where I am from, Tom.
Alan the Alien, thank you so much.
Thank you for that. That was quick. How'd you get that so fast?
I know. I'm sorry for going over with
No,
Charles,
it's fine.
but-
No, it's good. I listened to it on the radio.
Oh, great, thanks. Yeah, are you planning on going to any of those movies? The NH Docs? It's like 75 movies.
Yeah,
There's a lot
I
to it.
mean, yeah.
The feature filmmaker, D.A. Pennebaker and Chris Hedges. Have you seen anything of his?
Well, Pennebaker's done all those
Don't Look Back.
all
the
those
Bob
music
Dylan.
documentaries.
But also
Right,
The War
right.
Room with about Bill Clinton's 91, 92.
Oh, he did
presidential
that.
campaign.
Yeah.
James Carville. And
What does
George
that got to do with
Stephanopoulos.
New Haven filmic? New Haven documentary?
He so
I thought it
NH
was
Docs.
the Henry Green thing.
That's the opening movie. But
Right.
NH Docs collaborates with Arts and Ideas, and Arts and Ideas has always had like a featured filmmaker
Oh,
weekend.
yeah.
And so this is and Pennebaker's also taught at Yale in the past. He's studied
Nice.
Haven Connection.
Yeah.
But this is more like the
Yeah.
last year they had Alex Gibney, they've had John Sayles in the past. So,
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you for
so much stuff to do.
so much to do.
Well, I would have never seen this. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Although how stupid and undeveloped was the captain who is Christian? Okay? There are 2 lines
They
about how
don't
they're not
like
going to
me
vote,
because I'm
and then
not
nothing,
faithful.
and then nothing else.
That's what I mean by the Committee on Ideas.
Yeah.
Insisted.
Ugh.
And literally, these people have meetings and they say, if we put these lines in,
Right.
we'll get good attendance in the Bible Belt.
But
That's what they do.
But this is nothing new. The compromises that Hollywood imposes upon
Right.
artists with their visions, and I think that Alien is one of the examples of the blockbuster series that actually managed to
They managed to.
think about something pretty serious while also entertaining.
Right. No. I utterly agree.
But Terminator kind of gets it out too.
Love Terminator. Hi.
sweetie. How's it going?
Good.
Hey.
Good to see. I can see Judgment. I can see that stuff.
Is there a new movie that you're keen on talking about sometime soon? Next week we can't. I've got 2 interviews, but maybe the following week, if you're up for doing like we could do the full hour and just chat about new movies.
What is, I don't know what's around anymore, but
Like,
I don't know. I'm not,
well, I'll send you an email with.
we missed the Zookeeper, right?
Oh yes, yeah, we did. Did you?
I'm in the mood for like World War II, something historical if that's around. I don't know what that is.
Their Finest got you on the history book.
Yeah. Well, whatever you want to do. I mean, I'll watch almost anything. But I actually,
As evidence to
in my mind, I make a distinction between documentaries. And we never talk documentaries, which
I know,
is good.
except our very first one, Best of Enemies. Do you remember that documentary about
the debates.
Buckley and Vidal?
Yeah.
That was a
talk about we talked about Jimmy Baldwin.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh no, did you weren't in that? Alan came or Arnold came.
Oh, I
out.
talked.
But
to
you
him
spoke with
and I
Arnold.
sent him
about
to
that.
you
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to do a documentary,
No.
I'm
No.
happy to do that too.
No. Whatever you think you want to see,
I'll let you know.
send me.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
Did you see the second Guardians of the Galaxy yet?
No, I didn't. How is it?
Have you seen the first one?
I did. Wasn't crazy about it. Liked it, but this is that superhero fatigue. Man. I was like, there's only so much that I can look at.
I really liked it.
But I did. I thought it was really. I mean, Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt's great.
Bradley Cooper is the raccoon.
Batista from WWE.
So good, so good.
And Vin Diesel.
All right, as Groot.
Groot.
But have you seen? Have you seen the new one yet?
Yeah.
And what'd you think?
I really liked it.
Nice.
I thought it was a big improvement.
If you so you probably tell my show is about movies in New Haven. So if you ever want to come on for one of the movie reviews, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. Yeah.
Could I get your email?
Yeah. I would love to. I watch a good amount of movies.
That'd be awesome. I'll send you links to the show, and Usually, Alan and I do like a 15, 20-minute review of anything playing at the Criterion, as long as it's playing like somewhere in New Haven or near New Haven.
I really like the Criterion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they bring in a lot of. I mean, they're smaller screens. They bring in really interesting movies.
The only thing is, I don't love the parking around there.
Well, isn't there? There's a garage right there. I walk, I'm afraid, so I don't have much trouble with the parking. But is it difficult to?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of annoying.
It's kind of
Well, that's like the my whole life in New Haven is
difficult parking.
annoying parking.
Yeah. Well, definitely with like summer blockbusters season coming up. If there are any big ones that you're looking forward to and want to chat about, just
Cool.
let me know. I'll send you an email when I get back to it.
All right, yeah, I'd love that.
Cool. All right. All right.
Just say stop stream. Do you want me to do it?
Do you know how to do it?
That I do. You have 2 seconds?
I have 1 or 2 seconds. I have 1 second.
Wow.
I have 3 seconds.
For me?
Oh, okay. I have to make sure that I'm
Shit in the middle. Oh. Let's put it not on. Here's the mouse.